Now we're going to use the technique that we learnt in order to draw a city and a road with some buildings on. So I'm going to put my horizon line further away this time. So you can put your horizon line near the top of the paper because we want to focus more on what is on the ground here rather than what is up in the sky. And I'm going to put my perspective point in, and this time I'm not going to put it right in the middle, I'm going to put it a little bit to the side. Okay, so there is my perspective point. Now I'm going to put a building into my drawing. So my building is going to be here. So I'm going to begin with my rectangle. Now I'm going to do the same thing where I draw 4 lines that go back to my point perspective. Now I'm going to do these really lightly so that I can remove them later. So now I'm going to think about how deep the building is going to be, how far back it's going to be, how wide that building is. So I'm going to take my bottom corner, and I would like the building to be quite long. So I'm going to put the perspective point back here. For the other bottom corner, I need to follow this line because this bottom corner is here, and I will follow it along and put it so it is parallel, it is level with this bottom corner here. Okay, so that's going to be the bottom of the building. Now for the top corner, again I follow this line and I mark it above this corner, and then for this top corner I'll follow this line and mark it above this top corner. So I will have another rectangle here. So I can lightly join those lines up. And then I'm going to match all the corners up. So you can see I have a really long building. And when I'm matching up the corners, I'm following along the perspective lines. Okay, so now I can remove any lines that are inside the face of the shape. Okay, and now I have my building that looks like it is getting further and further away as it travels back towards the perspective. Now for my building, I need to actually add some detail to it. So we're going to add some windows. Now the windows on this face need to be at right angles to the edge of the building. So I'm going to draw some straight lines that run parallel to the top and bottom of the building. It's important here, don't get distracted by the perspective lines, just draw parallel to the top and the bottom. Okay, so all of my lines are parallel, running alongside the top and the bottom. Now what I can do is put some lines in that run parallel to the two sides. So I'm going to mark in some lines like this that go straight up and down okay, like this, and now I can add some value to show that those are darker parts of the drawing. And again, I can remove the lines that I don't need now. Okay, so now I have my building with my windows. Now, if I put windows on this side of the building, I need to use these perspective lines to give me a guide. So, once again, I need to be travelling back towards the perspective point. So I'm going to mark on some more lines here. That go back through the perspective point and that I can use as a marker for where to put my windows. So once I have these lines drawn in, I can start marking windows and doors. So I might begin with a door here. Now, all of the edges of the windows and the doors do need to be straight up, like I did here. But they need to finish and end at the perspective point. So to add a door in, I'm going to go from this perspective point up to this perspective point. And then for the bottom of the door, I will move along. And then for the top of the door, I will move along this line. Okay, so these lines are my guide for how to draw the door. So the bottom and the top of the door are guided by these perspective lines. The sides of the door are straight up and down in line with the edges of the building. So there is a door marked on there. To do a window, I can do the same thing. I will mark a line straight up and down. Then I'll move along my perspective line to see where that will end. And I can mark in several windows like this. Then again, it's a nice idea to add some value to show that this is a darker part of the image. And then I can remove the lines that I no longer need. For the door, if I want to add some more detail to the door, I might want to show the door frame. I can draw another perspective line very close to this line and use that as a line to go back. And again, straight up. And then it will appear that I'm showing the interior wall here and giving it some depth to the drawing. Okay, and now I can remove all of these guidance lines that I don't need and just keep the detail and just keep the outline of the building. So now I have one building in my town. I'm going to draw a road, and the road is going to come from this perspective point forward towards me looking into the image. Now I'm going to draw a building on the other side of the road. So I'll begin by drawing a rectangle. And in the same way that I did before, I'm going to draw perspective points. And in the same way that I did before, I'm going to draw perspective lines that go from the perspective point into each corner of the building and through the other side. Now I'll do the same thing where I take each corner, move it back along the perspective line and mark from there. So for the bottom corners, I need to make sure I'm following the lines that go through the bottom corners of this shape. So I have one here, and then from this bottom corner I will follow up and mark one that is parallel here. And then for the top corners, again, I will follow along the line and mark here, and this top corner will be about here. And then once again, I'm going to join up so that I have another rectangle. So now I have my two rectangles, I can match up the corners using the perspective lines. And once again, I can remove any lines that are inside the face of the shape now. Now I can do the same thing that I did before. So remember, the face that is facing me, I will use parallel lines to the top and the bottom to mark where my windows are going to be. And then parallel lines to the two sides to mark where the edges of those windows will be. And again, I can use value to show where the windows are and mark them in. And again, to show where the door is going to be, I'm going to need to use my perspective line. So I will go back from this point towards the perspective point. And then the edges of the doors and the windows will be parallel to the edges of the building again. Well, this time they'll be much smaller. because I'm looking at this building from much more of an angle than this building. Okay, and once again, remove the lines that you no longer need. So now I'm going to make a bit more detail here. I'm going to add a pavement, a sidewalk, but again using this perspective point. So you can see that the sidewalk is going to get wider and wider as it becomes nearer to me. So now I'm going to mark some paving stones on, and again I need these to be parallel with the horizon line, and I'm going to start by making them quite spaced out, quite big, and as they get further and further away I need to put them closer and closer together so it gives the illusion of distance, so it's further away from me. So there's my sidewalk. Now if I was going to add maybe a row of trees into this design, behind the building, I'm going to use the perspective point again, and I'm going to mark where the bottom of the trees are going to be, and then I'm going to mark where the tops of the trees are going to be. So I'll use my perspective point, use my line, and mark like this. So my nearest tree will begin at the bottom of this perspective line and end at the top. The next one, again, this bottom perspective line, this top perspective line. And so on, going further and further back.
A simple little mountain.
Okay, again on this side, if I wanted to have a fence behind the building, I'll do the same thing, mark on my perspective line. Think about how tall do I want the fence to be compared to the building. Not too tall. And the railings of the fence will be going directly up. And again, the same thing, as they get further and further away, they will get closer together. So now I can mark on some detail. So another thing I can do is maybe add some mountains in the distance. So now this is up to you. You can add as much detail as you are able to do in the time. You can add more buildings in the distance. You can add more trees, a lake, anything that you can think of, but trying to use this perspective point at all times. Once it is all drawn, you can colour it in, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your finished 1-point perspective drawings.